Welcome to the Pillars of Progress podcast from MCL Construction, where we highlight people, partnerships, and projects shaping the future of our communities. I'm Travis Justice. In this episode, we sit down with Josh Berger from Woodbury Corporation to talk about one of the most anticipated redevelopments in Omaha, the Crossroads. Once a bustling shopping destination, the Crossroads is now at the center of a massive transformation. And Josh gives us an inside look at the vision, the progress, and what's next for this iconic location. Josh Berger, welcome to the Pillars of Progress podcast. Do you feel important being here?
I do feel important. First time for everything.
Is this your first podcast you've ever done?
It is.
Now, you've been over TV a lot because of the progresses being made at the Crossroads. Of course, you recently just had the groundbreaking, and that shows a significant sign of progress. Are you happy where you're at with that right now?
We are. Crossroads is a big animal, and the real estate business is, unfortunately or fortunately, it's a slow moving boat. And in terms of like where we've been and where we're at, yeah, we're pretty pleased with where it's at. A lot of people wouldn't, naturally think that because they're worried about buildings coming out of the ground and that sort of thing. But you got to go slow to go fast. And the way we structured the project, although it's taken some time, we can now move forward without any sort of impediments.
Let's go back before we go forward. I mean, I think a lot of people in Omaha, since the Crossroads sits on one of the busiest, if not the busiest intersection in the city, wondered why it took so long. And there were so many, proposals thrown out there.
Yeah.
Why did it take so long to get to where we are right now?
Well, there's a lot of history there. Frank Krejci obviously bought them all. He had a couple different partnerships that changed and morphed. And the truth of the matter is the partnership that before Frank passed, he had with Lockwood, and the partnership's called KJ Ventures. They did a terrific job, and they really they envisioned Crossroads. They set up the road infrastructure. They did a ton of work with the city to get a mixed-use agreement in place. And when we got involved, we sort of took the ball from the point of the infrastructure in place and reimagined the master plan a little bit, primarily with parking, and moved it forward that way. But it's 44 acres, and it's not. We're not building a strip center. Or grocery-anchored strip center. We're building a city within a city. And, when you layer in the city negotiations and all the kind of economic, financial analysis to make this thing work, it just takes a long time. And, all of that work, particularly with Century and Lockwood, they did a lot of that through COVID. And, credit to them that they had the stomach to demo the project, do all the work with the city on the infrastructure, and then push it forward to a point where we got involved. So, like I said, fortunately, unfortunately, real estate business can be a slow process. And, it's a big project, and we want to get it right where, try not to stub our toes with the types of tenants, the types of uses, and there's a little bit of there's some chemistry involved there too. You've got to get your adjacencies right, you got to get the mixes right with the different uses, and it's not an instant gratification business.
So, what excited Woodbury Corporation when you're sitting here as their director of development in the Midwest? You go to the Woodbury Corporation and say, hey, what about this? What did they look at that and go, oh, there's possibility here?
Yeah, I mean, Woodbury's been in business for 106 years this year. And it sounds kind of cliche, but it's just really the truth. It's the location. Unless the city of Omaha goes out of business, 72nd and Dodge is always going to be a prominent location. And from our perspective, sort of doing all the data analytics and analyzing the site and the adjacencies and what else is going on along the Dodge Street corridor with the library and UNMC and UNO and the hospitals up the street, it's just a prominent blue chip property. And, it's funny, in the late 50s, early 60s, Woodbury built the first mall in Utah. And
Really?
similar to sort of the same time frame the Crossroads was being built, by its original developer. And so they just happen to still own that mall in Utah. And it's just a prime location in Utah. So again, the longevity of the company and the history of the retail business, Woodbury cut its teeth in retail, and we just really like the location. And it was not a walk in the park to convince, again, the size of the project and, the economic conditions that we're working through, everybody's working through. It's hard to do development right now. And it was not a walk in the park to convince the family to take on a project of this scale. We initially started off working with Lockwood and Century KJ as doing one project, one multifamily project, and it sort of morphed into taking on the whole thing and sort of being the master developer. And that took some time to do that. And then it also took quite a bit to convince the family to do it.
Yeah, it's not small by any means. No. And we're just talking about really the first phase of what's going to happen down there. Of course, you had the groundbreaking for Cinemark. Mm-hmm. Why do they make the great anchor to kick this thing off? What is that going to bring?
Well, it's the other end of the barbell from Target. And so Target's effectively a grocery store, department store. Cinemark offers the same sort of traffic, but it's on the other side, and it offers a different use with entertainment. And so, we've been doing business with Cinemark for, I think, 40 years, for a long time. Multiple deals with them in Utah and elsewhere. They're a great publicly traded corporate tenant, and it's really the people that it'll draw. So Cinemark helps make all that other retail leasing more feasible on the Central Green, the block to the east of Cinemark, the main sort of center of the development, because of the traffic draw it's going to generate.
So you talk about that. Cinemark usually doesn't go into cities like Omaha. What was their attraction to Omaha?
Good question. So, they're doing 4 of these over the next, I think, 3 years. Omaha's one of them. They opened one in El Paso. It's done exceedingly well. It's the location. So the real estate people that run Cinemark knew Omaha. They have a new real estate sort of location person that came on board with Cinemark a couple years ago. And that person had worked previously in Omaha with a different company. And when we met, and for the first time, we sort of socialized this idea of this opportunity. That person was like, that's the best piece of real estate in Omaha. And if we have the chance to go there, we should really pursue it. So it's a combination of, some expertise, some subject matter, real estate expertise, who has experience in Omaha, and the history of doing business with Woodbury helped us get over the hurdle of becoming the first project. And it's a big building. It's 90,000 square feet.
Wow, that is big. It's funny because you go back to when you're in grade school and high school and everything, and you talk about the house you want to buy or something, and everybody tells you location. Yeah. You've said it like 3 times already.
Yeah. We're just bullish on it. You can't create density. It's hard to take a suburban site and try to create density. And we have that built in at Crossroads. And we have great neighbors. The city and the people that are helping vision 72nd and Dodge in that corridor, the dollars that are being spent along Dodge Street, the sort of reinvestment, which Omaha's amazing at doing, reinvesting in itself. All of those factors play into the kind of calculus of, risk and investment decisions. So
we're talking about Cinemark, but people are probably going to know, well, okay, we've got a nice Cinemark, but what else is going to go there? Is there going to be green space? Is there going to be parking? Is there going to be living spaces? What is this first phase really going to bring?
Yeah. So one of the things that we did when we sort of got more involved or in the driver's seat in terms of the development is we had to rethink how parking was going to work. Some of the previous thinking was going to keep that legacy garage just to the north of Target off of Cass Street and use that as largely the supply for parking. And, we just didn't think that was an investable way to approach the master plan. So what we did is we took a step back and we looked at how would parking work and be most advantageous to get the highest value for the property. And just again, some previous experience, we knew we needed to have parking sort of localized. And so for two things. One, to create the density that we want to have based on the cost of the land, you got to put parking on each site, but you got to have it structured parking. And one of the things we brought to the table different, probably new to Omaha, is we put it underground. And some of that is because of the topography that exists there at Crossroads. Frankly, I don't know if most people know this or not, but that the original mall had a basement.
Really?
Yeah. So
is there a tunnel system and stuff?
Yeah, like you could drive a semi truck down there.
Really?
And turn around, and all the services, the deliveries for those shops in the mall were under the mall, and it was the craziest thing you'd ever seen. But so if you go out there, you see all these big holes in the ground, and people are like, well, why are those holes there? Well, they're remnants of what used to be a basement. So we're sort of trying to take advantage of that kind of existing geography. But then also, you can't just put parking garages and have, all the density up above the parking garage, right? So rather than doing that, we decided, we know that it's expensive to do it, but let's push it underground and try to make it really convenient. So, when you're trying to attract the high-end tenants that we want to have at Crossroads, and we live in Omaha, Nebraska, we cannot deny that fact. We're not Chicago, we're not Manhattan, we're not San Francisco, where we don't have the mass transit and people drive cars. I mean, and everybody's going to drive to Crossroads largely. But having the parking convenient and proximate to where you're going to shop, where you're going to eat, where you're going to, reside, where you're going to office, really is going to make Crossroads different than what it would have been with the large parking garage. And I just think about it like this, it'd be hard to convince my wife to go out to eat at Crossroads and have to walk 3 blocks in February. No one's going to want to do that.
I would agree with you on that.
And so rather than trying to, square peg round hole that idea of parking, we decided let's just figure out a way to approach parking differently where we put it on site, underground, and build on top of it. And it took some convincing, and it took a lot of underwriting and a lot of analysis to figure out if it's going to make sense. But that's where the city stepped up, and they bought into the vision of doing this. And without their partnership, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Because it is a joint relationship with the city and Woodbury and WRK. Kind of go into that and the local aspect of this. I know Woodbury's based out of Utah. You're here, but what other local partners besides the city are involved with this?
Yeah, so of course the city of Omaha is large strategic partner. They've been amazing. Understood the vision, bought in, negotiated, smart people. And then our other local partner is WRK out of Lincoln. So WRK is probably most famous for the rail yard down in the Haymarket or in the West Haymarket. So it's the right outside of Pinnacle Bank is the rail yard, and then they own the buildings throughout the West Haymarket, along with other buildings in Lincoln, of course. But we've had a long standing relationship with them. In fact, I used to work for WRK years ago, and Woodbury's been in business and partnership for them for, I don't know, probably 20 years, 15 to 20 years, for a long time. So terrific people, men with integrity, a business that believes in doing the right thing, believes in community, salt of the earth guys, and really salt of the earth people, and really happy to have them involved with us at Crossroads. Their value add. One of the things too that made it make sense for us to approach them as being a partner with us is they manage the rail yard, which is very similar to what we want to do with what we're calling the Central Green. We'll come up with a better name than that. We just don't have that just yet. But that's the block that's kind of the heart of what is going to be Crossroads, and similar uses, and kind of retail around the Central Green.
I know you probably can't give names, but when you say higher end retail, what are you envisioning? I know you probably can't give potential clients or tenants, but what are you envisioning?
Well, so we want to be fashion focused. You've got to have some strategic anchor restaurants, some out of market. So one of the nice things about Woodbury is, again, they've been in business for such a long time, and they have such a big portfolio of retail that we have relationships with a lot of these companies already. And in fact, one of the things we talk about in Utah, we're redeveloping a very similar project. It's an old mall site that Woodbury purchased. I don't know. It's been a while. I don't know the dates exactly, but it's basically 5 to 6 years ahead of where Crossroads is today. It's called Holiday Hills. And so it's sort of interesting because all the tenants that we're approaching in Holiday Hills were sort of saying, hey, we also happen to have a very similar site at Omaha, Nebraska called Crossroads. And so we kind of get the kill one bird with two stones, or kill two birds with one stone. Yeah. Approach with these tenants. So that's a strategy. And then along with all the other retail strategy, the retail leasing business is really it's a relationship thing. And, you got to know the companies, and a lot of these companies that we want to approach and bring to Omaha, we're already doing business with them elsewhere. Just like, for example, Cinemark, we happen to have a long-standing relationship with them and have done multiple deals with them. So there's a trust factor built in, and similar to the retail, that we want to approach for Crossroads. But largely it's new to market stuff. It's fashion focused. We do think that there's going to be a blend of local kind of restaurant type venues, and then also new to market restaurant venues. We don't want to be restaurant heavy. We want to be strategic about that, because we don't want it just to be places to eat. But then fashion and fashion focus and soft good stuff. There'll probably be some service retail, but largely that largely happens in that Central Green piece is kind of the retail block. So
I'm going to ask you maybe a tough question. I don't know. You said you've done your analysis. How does it work with Exarban Village so close, West Road so close? What did you look at and go, you know what? It doesn't matter how close those are. This still works here. And, let me guess, location?
Yeah, some of that is. And Exarban's not as retail focused, right? It's more corporate driven, and these restaurant kind of restaurant venues. You have all of the housing with between UNO and then just the local Exarban housing. But Exarban's really a hub for corporate, and which they've done a great job. I mean, they have some amazing corporate, partners there. Yeah. But there's not a ton of retail there, right?
I would agree with that. Yes.
And it's tough. And the retail business is a herd mentality. And so you've got to get, that anchor. We talked about that anchor. Well, we have a Target, and now we have a Cinemark. And so we have anchors where that retail will draw that client, that shopper client. And then it's just getting, again, I talked about chemistry. It's getting that retail chemistry just right, because everybody cares about co-tenancy. Who's my neighbor? Well, if you can get this guy to go, then we'll go. And so it's, getting that lineup just right so that we can attract those tenants to come to Crossroads. When you're comparing to West Roads, it's probably a different offering because the mall offering is a different offering than what we're trying to do, and we're nowhere near the sizes from a total retail square footage. We're nowhere near the size that West Roads is.
That makes a lot of sense. I got to go back to parking real quick because I'm sure a lot of people want to know. I want to know. You have a parking garage down there right now. It is an eyesore. Mm-hmm. Do you think that will be fixed, or do you think that eventually goes down?
Well, it is an eyesore. It's also functionally sort of obsolete. It's a big airport garage, and it worked great when the mall was there because you could park, walk across a bridge, and be indoors. And whether it was 95 degrees or 5 degrees, relatively easily you could be inside, and you could navigate the weather vis-a-vis mostly being inside and covered. The other thing that we looked at is, again, we talked about data analytics. 72nd and Cass is an amazing intersection. And it's just a little bit less of an intersection as 72nd and Dodge.
Now, that's the way I come to work every day. I take Cass because Dodge is too big. It's like, Cass is much easier for me.
Yep. And so that matters. And so that corner, that 72nd and Cass corner, is too valuable to have a largely inactive block of development there. So to answer your question, the garage will come down. And we'll build something new there that'll have activity. The challenge with the site is, you're on the sort of backside of Target, so you got a little bit of that sort of utilitarian portion that you have to deal with. But it's a great site. The city doesn't want to run that garage. It's too expensive to run because it's so big, and it has probably $10 to $12 million worth of improvements that would have to be made to make it functional.
Wow.
So when you start to look at it that way, sort of opportunity costs with the location, the cost to get it up to modern standards, and then the fact that you're asking people to park there and try to walk 3 blocks, and these are big blocks. People don't understand. Like if you drive out to Crossroads, the blocks are super blocks, so they're almost double what a normal city block is. So it's like a Las Vegas block where you look and you're like, that's only, that's right there.
Keep going.
And you keep walking and you keep walking. That's why the signs are so big.
You have to put like a Bellagio fountain out there.
That's right. And so, trying to park there, convince people to park there and walk to eat or walk to shop or walk to whatever, we just didn't think it was feasible.
Makes a lot of sense. So I'm glad you answered that. And there will be apartment living down there too, right?
Yep. So phase 1 encompasses 3 blocks. We got super creative. It's blocks, from left to right, top to bottom. It's A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So
easy to remember.
Yeah. Easy to remember, right? So blocks B, D, and E are are phase 1.
Okay.
So it represents about a third of the site, a third of the total development.
So we talk about progress. We broke ground on Cinemark, but how long do you think till Cinemark will be open and then the other stuff starts to follow?
Yeah, so good question. So we will be going in earnest with Cinemark by the end of July. And some of it's just contract stuff. We just have to button up contracts. And again, we want to go slow to go fast. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves in terms of the sort of the paperwork side of things. We're under design on both of the other 2 blocks, and those will follow Cinemark. But the Cinemark project, we got to build the garage first because the building sits on top of the garage. The garage is going to take, somewhere between 12 and 14 months to build, hopefully faster, but probably not. And then Cinemark's probably going to take between 10 and 12 months to build. So you stack those together, there'll be some overlap, but it's probably 24 months, in that give or take a month or 2 on either side of that. Some of it's weather dependent. If we end up building across 2 winters, that can affect things. Block B is right on the heels of that. So we'll do the parking garage for Block B right out of the gate. So that garage will open when Cinemark opens. So Block B is the center block adjacent to Cass on the north side of the development. And it's a big block. So we'll build about an 800 stall parking garage on the north side, which will be above ground. That's the only one that's planned above ground. And only on Cass Street, it's only going to be 1 level above grade. So it won't be this massive garage.
Like it won't be an eyesore.
We hope it won't be an eyesore. No, I mean, it's a parking garage. You can only screen it so much.
True.
But it's not going to stick out of the ground, 60 feet. It's only going to be one level. So that should help. And then in front of that, to the south, we'll have our next building, which will be a mixed-use building. So the first level will be retail, so about 35,000 to 40,000 square feet of retail. And then above that, we'll have multifamily. And right now, we're negotiating with a different group out of Utah to take kind of an office position on the second level of that building, which I can't talk about the names at the moment, but we'll have retail, a little office component, and then multifamily.
It's a lot of work. I mean, but you mentioned progress is slow, but 24 months, I think that seems reasonable, which is, I think people are just excited to see something happening there because it sat empty so long. I do have to ask you, how's a small town Nebraska guy end up in real estate?
Yeah, it's a weird route, to be honest with you. So I grew up in the construction business. My dad's an electrical contractor. I got my license when I was, 17 or 18 or 19, something like that. I don't remember exactly.
Did he expect you to go right to work right then?
No. There was no hope for me to be an electrician. I just, you get paid more if you have a license. So I went to school, to a private art school in Kansas City, the Kansas City Art Institute.
Hold on. You know how this doesn't make sense. You're an artist and you're now like this buttoned up real estate guy.
I know. It is a little weird. Admittedly, I definitely don't have the pedigree that most real estate people do. So I grew up in with a construction background. I happen to be a decent artist. Sort of like golf. If you don't do it every day, you kind of lose it. I can probably draw better than you, but trust me, you can draw a lot better than me. I can't draw anything. But so I went to school for design. I went to school on a sculpture scholarship. I changed my major from my freshman to sophomore year and got into design. And I ended up loving that and moved from Kansas City to Lincoln, and I worked for a couple different companies, but I ended up working for Arch Rival, a design company in Lincoln. And we just happened to be moving office spaces from one location to another, while I was there. And that's how I got introduced to real estate, through that process. And the owner of the building that we moved into, I could see things that were kind of getting screwed up, and I was like, I could probably help with this. So I just sort of jumped in and started help managing the process. I could talk to the architect, I could talk to the contractor, and just sort of help manage the process. Well, the owner of the building's like, hey, you really did a great job here. Maybe you should think about coming and work for us. We're starting a real estate company. And I said, well, I don't know anything about real estate. I have no background on that. And he goes, that's okay. We can help teach you that. And I said, sure, I'll take the leap of faith. And I did. And that company became, I worked for a guy named Will Scott and his brother Robert Scott, which became WRK. And so
it all comes back around, doesn't it?
Yeah, small world, right? So I started a company with Will and Robert Scott called WRK. I was the first employee, and that's how I got introduced to real estate. And then from there, the ball just bounced a couple different directions, and ended up with Woodbury from probably 5 years after that. Woodbury came to the market when Nebraska went from the Big 12 to the Big 10, and they put out an RFP to do a research park, which is now called Innovation Campus. And Woodbury submitted for that RFP, and along with WRK as a partner, and we won it. And I transitioned from WRK to Woodbury and was with Woodbury for, 5 or 6 years. So, and sort of circled back with them here. I ended up staying at the local partnership for a period of time, and then left. Ended up circling back with Woodbury probably 6 years ago.
So I have an idea, and you tell me if you think I'm off the wall here, because you can combine your two loves here. You've made the real estate deal. I think you need to get back into sculpture and have a sculpture from Josh Berger in the green space at Crossroads.
Yeah, that'd be fun. That'd be great. I'd love to. I think about it a lot. I kind of got into building, lighting and furniture and more industrial type stuff. And I think about it a lot. I go back to the Art Institute every spring for the senior show, and I miss it. But I enjoy what I do now, and I think about the creativity that we do in real estate now, and that's kind of how I express myself. And the creativity of the deal and the visioning of the deal is also kind of that same kind of creative outlet for me personally. And I know that Jeff Woodbury, who I look up to, who's sort of the mastermind for Crossroads from a Woodbury perspective, he's amazingly creative in how he thinks about things and thinks around the corner and sees around the corner, which I think is, I just love to absorb every chance I get.
Man, it's a lot to look forward to. Josh, I appreciate you taking the time to be on this podcast. Yeah. It was your first one. Was it easy?
First one, easy enough.
So we tried to make it easy. Josh Berger from Woodbury Corporation. Thanks for watching the Pillars of Progress podcast.
Thanks so much.